And welcome back to another episode of Dogs on the Couch, where everybody's allowed to have an opinion. It does not matter if you played the game you were watching. So you're allowed to have an opinion as well. First and foremost, please like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, subscribe. It's free of charge. It doesn't cost you a thing. It also helps grow the channel as well as push these kinds of videos into the algorithm so that like-minded people may have a chance to view them as well. We set our first goal. We would like to try to reach 100 subscribers, and you personally can help us out by becoming family and hitting that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. Now with that said, now that we got that out the way, there have been, massive deals that have gone down here recently within the NBA market. And when I say massive, I'm really just kind of referring to the amount of capital, draft capital. And in this first trade that we're going to talk about in specific, not just the draft capital, but the players as well. Now, I do understand that, when you're trading for a superstar player, if you will, there are going to be massive requirements that have to be met in order to get that trade to actually take place. So I do understand that. More often than not, one team's going to have to give up more in order to be able to attain said superstar. However, a, a couple of these notable trades, I understand the direction that, their organizations are headed in. But in my opinion, they're giving up an awful lot to attain these superstar players. So let's just start with the Giannis trade that took place because, Giannis was a player that was on the board for, the Cavs. It was speculated and whatnot that this past season that Giannis was on the table as far as, the Cavaliers' radar. And I guess one of the things that maybe prevented that trade from going down, behind the scenes, what's speculated, they wanted Evan Mobley. And maybe the Cavs were not, ready to pull the trigger on Evan Mobley at that particular time. There could have been a bunch of things that, that ultimately played into that trade in specific not going down. However, the Miami Heat, they were able to execute a trade involving Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Giannis is now a member of the Miami Heat. But let's get into kind of what I was speaking about when I say it's absolutely mind-blowing to me what the Miami Heat had to give up in order to attain a Giannis Antetokounmpo. Okay, so the particulars of the deal: the Miami Heat traded Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, two-time MVP, Finals MVP 2021, and Bobby Portis, veteran player. He's given, solid production, especially in the years that he's had with the not the Miami Heat, with the Milwaukee Bucks. So Bobby Portis, nice, solid veteran NBA player, nice, solid veteran NBA big man, can stretch the floor. I think he's a very, very top-notch competitor. Like he has top-notch competitive spirit. Not scared of the moment. Those kinds of things. So Miami Heat are getting, you're getting Giannis, and you get a very, 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 very solid big man, veteran big man to go along with him as well. So some people are assuming that with Giannis, Bobby Portis, and Bam Adebayo, that their front line is set. Me personally, I kind of see a world where the Miami Heat are still making deals. They're still, trying to fill out the roster. Um, who knows if Bam Adebayo even remains on the roster? Pat Riley speaks very, very highly of Bam Adebayo. But when you filling out a roster, sometimes somebody may be able to make the right call, have the right offer, and may end up changing your mind. So we'll see. I don't believe the Miami Heat are done by any stretch. I think they're going to have to pull off a few other moves, not necessarily trades, but of course signing free agents, just to try to fill out the roster and create a truly, truly competitive team with the front court that they have currently established. But here's the kicker. Here is what the Miami Heat had to give up in order to attain Giannis and Bobby Portis. So the Miami Heat give up Tyler Hero, the Jaime Jaquez Jr., who's a decent player, decent guy. If I'm not mistaken, I think he finished second in the Sixth Man of the Year voting, if I'm not mistaken. So to kind of give a little bit of context of, how good he is, very decent player. Khalil Ware, a guy that's looked at as an up-and-coming 7-footer who can stretch the floor by shooting the ball at a nice clip. Excuse me, the other gentleman, foreigner, I'm probably gonna butcher his name, but Kasparis Jakionis, maybe. It's younger guard. I believe he was in the 2025 draft. Let me see. Yeah, 2025 draft, 20th overall pick. So long-term developmental piece. But again, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and Khalil Ware, three nice pieces. Tyler Hero is actually looked at as, an all-star. If I'm not mistaken, I think he made an all-star game, the all-star game in 2025. So, you got three players that can get on the court and produce right now, as well as a developmental piece. Also, along with said players, you get a 2026 first round pick, which is projected to be number 13 overall, 2031 unprotected first round pick, 2033 unprotected first round pick, 2030 first round pick swap, and a 2033 second round pick. So essentially 4 first round picks and then a second. So you got 4 players, 4 first round picks, and a second. Listen here, I understand what Giannis is. I understand that there are very few like him. But 4 players, 4 first round picks, essentially, and a second rounder as well, I think that is entirely too much. The only way that that's not entirely too much, you're going to have to win. Even if you don't win, you're at least going to have to make the NBA Finals with Giannis as a part of your organization. In my opinion, to justify giving away all that. Now, Pat Riley does have his, he has his moments where Pat Riley is gonna go. He's gonna go for it. I mean, we've seen that over the years. Shaquille O'Neal, Alonzo Mourning, the biggest, most notable one of them all. LeBron James and Chris Bosh. So we know that he has a tendency, Pat Riley, to do what it takes to get what he wants when he wants it. So, with that particular portion, I 100% understand, Pat Riley. Like, I get it. When you want what you want, you make sure to get it. I understand that portion of it. I just think maybe you gave up slightly, like a little too much. If we were talking about LeBron James in his prime, 100%. I'd give up F them picks. I don't care about the picks. I don't care about the players. Give me LeBron. LeBron James in his prime, though. But a somewhat aging Giannis who's coming off of a couple injuries, and you've essentially gutted the team to get him there and then traded away, all of the picks that you could have possibly used to try to round out the roster or add some type of youth. I'm not sure. So I have to see what else is being done by the Miami Heat. Because if you ask me, that trade is just, the asking price for Giannis was astronomical. And because of that, I am 100% okay with the Cavaliers staying out of that. Okay? We can't afford to be giving up much more assets. We gave up a lot of assets to get Donovan Mitchell. So, for all intents and purposes, I think it just means that Giannis wasn't meant to be here. The other blockbuster has been LaMelo Ball. Now, when we had Lonzo, I was kind of throwing around this random idea back then to a few people about, potentially trading Darius Garland and some type of package with Darius Garland to go after a LaMelo Ball, pair him with his brother, and see what you could possibly, get out of something like that. Having those two guys and a Donovan Mitchell, with an Evan Mobley, and kind of seeing where that goes or how that could work. Of course, Cavs ended up making the trade to acquire James Harden instead. So again, with what was given up in order to acquire LaMelo Ball. So the Minnesota Timberwolves, or excuse me, first, let's start with the Hornets. Okay, so the Hornets gave up LaMelo Ball and Josh Green. Okay, Josh Green is a decent NBA player, young guy. Need a little bit more growth added to his game, if you ask me. But decent NBA player. Kind of took a step forward last year, if you will. So LaMelo Ball, Josh Green. My, oh my, oh my. The Minnesota Timberwolves had to come up off of Naz Reid, a 2033 unprotected first round pick, and then 3 first round pick swaps in 2028, 29, and 30. Also, 3 second round picks, 2029, 2032, and 2033. So, my oh my, we have one player in Naz Reid, who very solid big man. Think he won 6 of the year, maybe 6 man of the year, maybe 2 years ago, something like that. If not, he was in the running for it. Then you get a 2033 unprotected first round pick, as well as 3 first round pick swaps and 3 second round picks. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I absolutely love LaMelo Ball and his game. I really do. It can get a tad wild and reckless, at certain times. But with the way that today's NBA is set up, I'd argue, his style of play fits what is today's NBA. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm taking anything away from LaMelo Ball. Like I said, at one point I was pushing for it. I'm like, hey, that's a guy we could kind of target. Now, again, one of the reasons, outside of the fact that essentially, you 4 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks plus Nas Reed for LaMelo Ball and Josh Green. I think that is entirely too much draft capital, especially considering that you included Nas Reed in the deal. Aside from that, similar to Giannis, not to the same extent, because Giannis just recently had issues as far as injuries are concerned. In LaMelo's case, for the most part, LaMelo has been dealing with injuries ever since he's entered the league. Whether it be a significant injury or just nicks and knacks that can keep you out for decent periods of time throughout the course of the season. I think this past season was honestly one of his better seasons, but he still had a couple dings here or there. So for me, again, when you giving up all of this draft capital as well as a player like Nas Reed, one of the main reasons why I would have been skeptical about it is just the injury history that comes with LaMelo Ball. And again, I'm a fan of LaMelo Ball. But the injury history would be very, very, very concerning to me. Because with everything that was given, you kind of have to hope and pray that he does not get injured this upcoming season. You need him to be alongside Anthony Edwards if you think you're going to be able to accomplish anything in the postseason. So, the amount of draft capital that has been offered up and given away to acquire these two superstar players, in my personal opinion, too much. And, for the Cavs in specific, I'm 100% okay with them staying out of those conversations, just completely staying out of that. Now, one conversation that has come up very recently here and has some form of traction, although it looks very far-fetched, the Jaylen Brown, Evan Mobley dynamic. So it seems that the rumors are, Boston would be willing to move off of Jaylen Brown, but it would take an Evan Mobley in return. Me personally, I can see good and bad in both areas. As far as if you do trade him or if you don't. If you do trade Evan Mobley to get a Jaylen Brown, I believe that you solved your main problem, which is a two-way wing. A solidified, stamped two-way wing player. Okay, not another 6'3" guard like they just drafted. The young man's Malik from Arkansas. Goodness, I forget the young man's last name. But yeah, a 6'5" in shoes, but 6'3" standing out of shoes, legit combine height. 6'3". I mean, the notion is he can shoot the leather off the ball. Hopefully that translates to the NBA from college. Usually shooting does. Shooting is usually something that translates. If you can shoot, you can shoot for the most part. But again, that 6'3" is kind of something that we've seen with the Keon Ellis, or a Dennis Schroeder, even Max Strus to a certain degree, even though I think Max Strus is a little bit taller than 6'3". Even still, he's not a legit 6'8", 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" athletic wing. So that's what I believe, you would immediately feel with trading and bringing in a Jaylen Brown. However, I believe that you lose a certain level of versatility as well as rim protection. Jared Allen is a great rim protector, but Evan Mobley is slightly better, in my opinion. Number one, just as far as switching, I feel like there are a lot more wings he could switch on to. And again, just natural athleticism with defending the paint and defending the basket. So there would be pros and cons both ways, in my opinion. So that's one that I really think you'd have to get really deep into the weeds to be able to find a legit reason to pull the trigger. And then once you do, ultimately say, I know for a fact that we are better as a team now that we have Jaylen Brown as opposed to when we had Evan Mobley. So that, that's kind of my take on that one. I don't really have a strong stance either way because I see both positive and negative outcomes from a Jaylen Brown, Evan Mobley trade / swap, if you will. So those are just quick takes that I had on some of the major moves that have been taking place in the NBA here recently. It really doesn't seem like the Cavs have been doing too much. They're not even really honestly mentioned in too many trade talks or anything like that. So it's kind of pointing towards the direction of standing pat. Something that, again, I've already expressed. I don't think will get you too far, especially with the Miami Heat making the trade to get Giannis. There's no telling what else they'll do to be able to fill out that roster. Of course, you're gonna have Tyrese Halliburton coming back. The Knicks are the defending champions. List goes on. The Eastern Conference will be, they will be formidable. It won't just be, you won't have the same path to the Eastern Conference Finals that you did this past season. So, hopefully there will be some form of, a productive move, if you will, to be made that somehow positions the Cavs in a better scenario than they were at the end of last season. And in my opinion, it's gonna have to be something more than the young man that you drafted from Arkansas, because we already have a ton of 6'3" guards on the team, as well as guys who are considered lethal shooters in Max Strus and Sam Merrill. Some could even throw James Harden in there. So when it comes to guards who can shoot, in my opinion, I believe we were kind of stacked as far as that's concerned. Really was of the ilk that we needed a legit wing defender who has some form of an offensive game to him. Some of the talks have quieted down about Dean Wade. However, it's not completely quiet. There's definitely still a large potential that Dean Wade could be coming back. We all know how I feel about Dean Wade and what he brings or may not bring to the team. We'll see. We'll see how the carousel turns going forward. But it's my opinion on where we stand at this particular junction. Dogs on the couch, signing off.